Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Lori, and welcome to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. This podcast fosters curiosity and understanding about neurodiversity while empowering individuals with tools for acceptance and inclusion in classrooms, the workplace, and communities. Featuring shared stories of neurodiverse life experiences, it sheds light on navigating a world not designed for diversity. Universally Unique starts now. Hi, welcome. I'm Dr. Lori, and today on Universally Unique, I have Daniel Lenois with me. And after we spend a few minutes taking a couple of breaths, Daniel will give us some information about his journey with his neurodiversity. So we're going to start with 3 box breaths, and I'll count those for us. We're going to breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, and then repeat. So breathe in, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, breathe out, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, breathe in, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, breathe out, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, breathe in, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, breathe out, 3, 2, 1, hold, 3, 2, 1, and a good sigh. Okay. Feel a little more grounded here?
I think so.
Okay, good. So what I would like to get started with is if you would kind of give us a little bit of an idea of what your journey with autism has been like, maybe a little bit of information about your educational experiences, and then some information about what your life has been like as what I would still describe as a young adult. But you probably would not appreciate me saying
Well, I
that.
appreciate it more than being called a senior citizen. So, I've got
Okay.
some time ahead of me.
All right.
Yeah. So when I was first diagnosed, I was 8. There wasn't a lot of available information. There wasn't a lot of information available about autism at the time. We're talking about the early 2000s. I knew that I was different than other kids for far longer than that, since, pretty much, I'd say preschool, kindergarten age. I understood that I couldn't socialize in the same way other kids could. The things that other kids enjoyed and reveled in, I found stressful and somewhat traumatizing. It was not a pleasant experience, and I knew that, but I didn't know why. I didn't know why I was different. I just knew that I was different, and when you don't have any information, it feels like because you're different, there's something wrong with you. Um, and there, and then we're talking about the very late '90s, early 2000s, so there wasn't a lot of information to go off of. I was put in first grade, and from the very start, public school, it just wasn't working out. I came from a very rural community where everyone kind of came from the same background. It was there's only one way of doing things, and if you did something that wasn't, even if what you did was right, like if I answered the question, correctly, but I didn't do it in the right way, I didn't come to the conclusions, the same thought process that everyone else did, all of a sudden you're doing everything wrong. And there were just a lot of those little incidents popping up where I'm like, I know I'm capable of doing the same thing other people can, but I'm not capable of doing it the same way that other people do it, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense.
There was just a lot of little experiences like that where I'm like, I know there's something different about me, but it wasn't until I was 8, that my mom and dad, who were very involved throughout the process, trying to figure out what they could do to help me, because they could see that I was uncomfortable in a lot of those situations. I don't like the word suffering because I think that isn't quite accurate, but I was very uncomfortable in a lot of situations. They really advocated for me to try to find services, but without a diagnosis, there weren't a lot of services available. Luckily, they finally were able to get me a diagnosis, because they did kind of suspect that I had what at the time was known as Asperger's syndrome, what is commonly now known as autism spectrum disorder. Um, but very few doctors were familiar with the condition, and so it took a while to find a specialist who had even heard of autism, and was able to diagnose me. From there on out, I eventually was pulled out of the public school system when it became clear that the teachers not only could not help me, but were very disinterested in helping me. There was a strong belief in that community, at least, that special education was only for behavioral kids, or kids that were just too difficult or too stupid to succeed in the system. I'm sorry to use that terminology, but that was the attitude at the time, and my parents were like, "Nope, that is not what Daniel is. We have to find what works best for Daniel." And so they ended up putting me in a homeschooling environment, where we adhere to all the state standards. I've read all the same textbooks. I learned all the same things. Um, Being out of the school environment did not mean I was not educated. I was very well educated. I'd like to think in some areas, my parents encouraged me to pursue, to find a way to, um, within the curriculum, find what interested me, find what I was passionate about, and while ensuring I adhered to all the same curriculum, got to explore who I was. They would take me to a lot of museums, a lot of engage in a lot of local history. We would go on field trips. They really tried to make my education as immersive as possible, because I was a hands-on learner. I love to interact with stuff. I love to visualize stuff, and so they tried, within the best of their ability, to cater my education in a way that made sense for me. And I'm very grateful for how they stepped in, right from the start. Because without that support, I might have turned out to be a much different person.
Yeah, it sounds like, especially given the way that the school system that you were in operated, it sounds like both of your parents were very involved in your
Yes.
homeschooling.
Yeah, no, they would take turns, and they both specialized in different things. My mom was my my ELA and history coach, and my dad would work with me on mathematics at night, because I have never done well with mathematics. I suspect, although I haven't had it confirmed, that I have dyscalculia. I have a lot of difficulty calculating numerical functions. I can understand the theory, but getting into practice, it's the more I focused on the numbers, the less they made sense to me. And so I made a deal with my dad that I would only do my math homework at 9 o'clock at night, specifically at the end of the day. So that way it was the last thing I would have to do before I went to bed.
Oh,
And
okay.
I held up my end of it, but I got to enjoy the whole rest of my day free of math. And then the last half hour, it's like, oh God, here comes the math homework.
Free of math.
But
Some
that's
of the
what
math
the
teachers I know
yeah.
would be sad to hear that, but
I
I
mean, no offense
understand.
to mathematics teachers. It is, but the point is,
Yeah.
my parents were able to, within their schedules, be flexible in their approach to me, and at that time, I definitely needed it.
Well, it also gave you a really rare opportunity to have a lot of time with your family
Yeah,
in a constructive and positive way. I would suspect that that's made you closer to your
yeah,
parents than
I think so.
maybe typical individual might be. So I think that's wonderful. And your dad came to your rescue today. So clearly,
Yes,
um,
I got myself locked out of the house temporarily because I brought the wrong key. Um,
yeah, it's
life just
tricky.
throws little problems at you, and it's all about how you resolve it, how you approach it, what mentality.
Yeah.
So
I
I'm like,
think
well, I need help.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes those things are things that remind us that we can take some deep breaths and that we can regroup.
Always.
So,
I think the
um,
world would be a lot happier if we all took some deep breaths before,
absolutely.
jumping out at the problem.
So after you finished all of the requirements for public schools, you took the
The
the graduate.
general, I want to say the GED, the general equivalency degree.
Yeah,
I believe. Don't hold me to that. I believe that's how it's said.
yeah, it's a
Um,
GED. I just couldn't
yeah,
think of what it
GED.
was. Well, it went
I
out.
think it's, yeah, but setting aside the acronyms, yes, I took it when I turned 18, a little after I turned 18, because in Connecticut, I believe you have to be at least 18 to take it. So I was 18 or 19 when I took it. I passed first time, which I'm very proud of, because it showed my parents really thoroughly prepared me for that. Not only did they walk me through like every grade of public school equivalency, we also did a lot of SAT and GED prep, getting every resource book we could to try to strengthen up my weaknesses, to improve on my strengths and get me as ready as possible. And I took it all in the span of 2 days and waited for the results with, anxious anticipation, and then found out I'm good to go. Like, you're good. You
Wow.
passed.
Yeah. I've heard that the GED test is actually quite hard. So
Well, yeah, yeah, but I felt ready, and I think, well, I don't know. I don't know what I thought at the time, but I feel good that I went in there as prepared as I could have been, and that's in large part thanks to my family helping out.
well, and my suspicion too is that part of the reason why you were so well prepared is because you had living, breathing opportunities to use the knowledge that you had to see
Mhm.
some of those historical sites. To probably, I'm guessing there were probably science experiments and, you know, other things that you did out in the world in a way that worked with your learning style. So it sticks better.
Yeah, and I think that mixture of theory and application has really influenced, my perspective since. And we'll get into this in a little bit, but it definitely influenced how I approached my undergraduate courses, and certainly my career path since then. I'm very grateful for, all those earlier moments. Like, I'll just say this really quickly. Um, my mom and I, and my dad as well. Between the two of them, we've taken trips to Washington D.C., Pennsylvania. Like, I didn't just read about Gettysburg. I went to Gettysburg. I didn't just read about I didn't just read the text of the Constitution of the United States. I got to see it in front of my eyes, like the actual living, breathing document, at the historical museum in Washington. I got to see the Declaration of Independence. I got to see the Liberty Bell. I got to see all these things that we just read about or see in historical photos. And I think being there in that moment, seeing where these battles took place, or seeing where these great works of poetry and fiction, prose, all these, to really immerse myself in the moment, has given me a unique perspective that I think a lot of I hope more people get to experience themselves.
Yeah. I had a conversation with somebody this morning when I was getting my coffee, and he was saying, how public school like totally didn't work for him, and how, it's not always the best way to teach, because most of the
No.
time it's really not. And, the way that you had the opportunity to learn, I think, is what we should all we should be striving for, that kind of an education for everybody. Maybe not necessarily that their parents are doing, but that all students have opportunities for more hands-on learning and more experiential things. So since the homeschooling period, you went off to, well, you didn't go off to college, right? You went to
No, no.
college
I
down the
commuted to
street. You
college.
went
Yeah,
to
yeah.
college.
I started off taking. I didn't at first know quite what I wanted to do. I had some ideas about what I wanted to do, and my dad was like, "Look, you don't have to know what you want to do, but go out and try something." So I went to Tungus Community College. I took a few classes there, no more than like 2 or 3 at a time, just to kind of get the sense of what being in college was all about. And
Mhm.
having not been in the K through 12 system for long, I'd missed out on a lot of the rigor, a lot of the academic discipline that was present. So like the idea of adhering to specific deadlines, like arbitrary deadlines, having to read a syllabus, having to acquaint myself with the mannerisms of my teacher. Those were things that were new to me that I had to adjust to. I did, but it did take some time. Originally, when I was started at Tungus, I started as a criminal justice major, because it was in my head that I'm like, you know what? I like the law. The law is clear, it's direct, it's literal. And when you have someone who is more literally minded, the idea of being something like a prosecutor or a defense lawyer is appealing, because then also one of the things that my parents might strongly argue if they were here was that I do have a tendency to be combative when I think I'm in the right about something. And if you're going down the legal path, that is not just a advantage, that's like a necessity, to believe in yourself. So I went to Tungus. I took some classes, but when I went there, a lot of the teachers were kind of only pushing students to just become cops, and a lot of the classes were just about, hey, this is how you do this work in a police station. I'm like, whoa, 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 not what I'm interested in. And it made me think, like, wait, do I really want to go down this career path? Like, yeah, I know these teachers are wanting us to go down one version of it, but do I want to go into this field at all? And the more I took those classes, I'm like, you know what, this isn't really for me. So I thought, what am I passionate about? What can I turn from a passion or a hobby into a legitimate, profitable career, something that I can, survive on, I can sustain on, and I can thrive in. And so I've always had a thing for English. English has always been my best subject. I love to read. I love to write. And I'm like, I'll go to English. I'll do English. And so at that time, I transferred to Central Connecticut State University, and I became an English Bachelor of Arts. And I was very lucky to have some excellent professors in the writing and English department. And there I discovered not only a passion for learning English, but also for teaching it. I had several 300 level classes where you would be expected to do 20 to 30 minute presentations in front of the whole class. And I know that's not quite like teaching a 60 or 90-minute block, but it does get you thinking, like, okay, what activities do I have to plan for this? How do I keep my listeners engaged? How do I make sure they understand the content? I'm like, you know what? I really love English and I really love teaching. Let me combine the two. And so I kind of, through an unconventional path, as has been true throughout my life, I found where I was supposed to be, and I ended up falling into the career path of a teacher. At that same time, I also discovered a passion. Well, not just a passion, I'd already had that, a practical application for writing. I love creative writing, and I've always played with the idea of writing my own stuff just for my own entertainment. But one of the classes I had to take was an introduction to fiction, and it was a practical course teaching you all the ins and outs of prose. And long story short, I submitted this one short story that my professor really, really liked, and everyone in my class, because we were reading each other's stuff, really, really liked. And my professor and one of my classmates was like, dude, submit this to the literary journal at the campus. We think it would be a very good match. You like, this is really, really good. And I'm like, nah, I don't think so. Like, I just write for myself. They're like, no, just submit it. If the worst that happens is they say no. So I submit it in time for the deadline. Like 2 days before the deadline, I send it in. I finally finished deliberating with myself, and like 2 weeks go by, and I get it back an email saying, congratulations, you're making it to the next issue of our literary journal. And that was my introduction to, like, wow, not only do I like what I'm writing, other people like what I'm writing. They think it's worth including in an honorable, literary magazine. And it just kind of blew my mind. Like, yeah. And thanks to that, I've since then published, I want to say, approaching two dozen short stories and flash fiction pieces since that first one in 2023. So in the past 2 years, I've produced about 20 or 20 something short stories. I've done a few novelettes, and I'm currently working on 2 novels. The first I'm hoping to have finished by the end of this year, and the other by like sometime next year.
Wow, you are a very, very prolific writer, which I think is just
Thank you.
wonderful, and probably a real testament to your ELA teacher. So make sure you dedicate something to her when you get that book published.
I definitely will.
So I think, you've talked a bit about your parents, so I'm thinking that they are probably really a big driving force behind kind of who you are. Is there anyone else who has made an impact on your life that you think, helped you make progress that you wanted to make, or helped you understand yourself better?
I did have one mentor when I was at Tungus Community College. I won't say his name, but he was my philosophy teacher, and I was going through a very rough period of my life. I was disconnecting from some very toxic relationships. I was kind of in a cult-like environment, and it was not a good headspace to be in. And I was trying to break away, and there was a lot of backlash from that. A lot of people trying to cling on to me, and I was just having to reinvent myself. At a already difficult time, like at the end of adolescence.
Yeah.
And he was able to step in and both in the class setting and even outside of it, he really stepped up and became a mentor figure to me. I got a lot of valuable life experience from him, and he helped me, refocus on the things that mattered most, cut off the parts of my life that were not productive, that were not healthy, cut away those weeds, and focus on the flowers instead.
I like the metaphor. Um, do you do you feel like you have a better sense of how to make friends and how to build community now, and which communities you don't want to be part of?
Yes, I definitely feel that. I've maintained a few strong relationships over the years. I prefer quality over quantity when it comes to my friends. I don't have wide networks of friends. I have people that I'm friendly with, but I'd say, I have maybe less than 10 like actual friends, but those friendships that I do have, I hold very deeply. We have very strong bonds.
Good, good. And I think, my experience with some of the autistic individuals that I've worked with is that they do have trouble sometimes making friends, or people find them and tend to exploit them. So I'm glad that
Mm.
you have a way of kind of weeding those kinds of folks out. Tell me, I think writing is probably your major superpower. Do you have a second superpower?
Well, that's my practical one. I also have a dumb one that I'll share as well.
Nothing's
Um,
dumb. What is it?
um, I, I have a very a visual memory, and like a practical application of that is, if I hear a song on the radio, I will not for the life of me know what the name of the song is, the band who made it, or like what year, or any relevant information. But I will know exactly what movie or TV show I last heard it from, even if I haven't seen the show for like 15 years. I will say that it is, like if I listen to one, listen to it on the radio, I'm like, oh, that was in episode, season 4, episode 1 of The Sopranos, which I saw 5 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I would suspect that some people would put that in the category of a savant skill.
Well, I don't consider myself a savant. I think I lack the IQ talent necessary for that. But I like to think I'm at least marginally above average intellect.
Oh, I think that you probably are from my own personal experiences in education. So, where is there a place that you feel is really like a safe place and a comfortable place for you? Where do you like to be the most?
Well, I mean, I am rather fond of my room since I live in it, but um, I I don't know. Like there aren't. I'm pretty comfortable in a lot of spaces, but when I need to relax, I sometimes I need to honestly put on my headphones. I have another pair of headphones I carry around with me. I can handle the noise and the disruption of everyday life. It's not a sensory overload thing for me, but sometimes I just need to disconnect. I need to, kind of go into my own quiet space. I need to, turn on my Audible, listen to an audiobook that I've heard 50 times over, and just, immerse myself in the relaxing nature of the narrator's voice.
So, which book have you listened to 50 times? Is there actually one?
There's a few. I am forever fond of high fantasy. My dad got me into a high fantasy series called the Belgariad, which is 80s, kind of a niche high fantasy series in the same style as Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter.
Oh, okay.
I'm very fond of the narrator's voice because it's got a very deep masculine voice, but he does a lot of different character voices and inflections. And I always have a deep admiration for voice actors. I grew up watching a lot of animation, and I've actually been lucky enough to meet some of the voice actors who meant a great deal to me when I was younger.
Wow, how
So
exciting.
it's a nice outlet. I wish I had the talent for it, but I can be an appreciator at least.
No, and I think you had shared with me when you and I met to kind of get to know each other a little bit that you do an overnight shift at a grocery store and you
Yep, I do
listen
pay
to
my
a
bills
lot
for the
of
time being.
audiobooks
Yep.
overnight.
While I'm learning how to be a teacher and getting my teaching certification, which I'm hoping to do within the next year, I'm paying my bills working at a grocery store. I know, not the most glorious work, but it pays the bills, and everyone treats me pretty good there.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I've always thought is everyone should have to work in a retail job or in some kind of service industry, like in a restaurant or something,
Mhm.
because you have a deep appreciation for the people who restock the shelves at the grocery store or wherever
Mhm.
at a later point in time, or you really appreciate the people who are serving your coffee or whatever. And I think people are much more
You know,
respectful.
community is very important to me. A lot of my earlier jobs have been about serving the community. I worked at a facility working with autistic kids. I worked there for about 5 5-6 years. And it as a counselor, I worked in direct care, and it was very, having other people like me that I could work with, that I could be a positive influence on. And through them, I also did a lot of advocacy work. I've been on public panels. I've spoken at the University of Rhode Island. I've been to like half the high schools in Connecticut. I really feel it's important to be an active member of the community. But that said, I did that for 10 years. I'm enjoying what I like to call a quiet retirement. I'm focusing on my own personal pursuits, but I'm grateful for, all the opportunities I've gotten. And I want to show people that I'm worth it, that I'm not just happy to get those opportunities, but I work for them.
Yeah. No, and I think, hearing people speak up is
Mhm.
really important. And I think, in my own personal opinion, having been part of preparing teachers and administrators for public schools, is that teachers are very influential in a classroom, and the way that
I
you
believe that.
carry yourself and the way that you teach your lessons and the way that you treat your students will ultimately be a different form of advocacy. You will be
Yeah.
showing people a different side of neurodiversity. And I suspect you will have a number of students who just gravitate right to you because they feel comfortable and they feel community.
Mm. There was I know we're running low on time, so I'll just address this really quickly. But one of the questions I don't think we got around to that I do want to answer was about misconceptions. You had a question
Okay. Yeah,
that you
no,
sent me
yeah,
about
please answer that. Yeah.
misconceptions about people on the spectrum. One misconception that I find in my life, to a certain degree, is that a lot of people. I have a tendency of having like a not so emotive face. I have to make a conscious effort to emote, and I do mask like when I'm out in public. I do make a conscious effort to show the emotions I'm thinking, but it's something I have to deliberately do. I think there's a perception a lot of times, and unfortunately, perpetrated by a lot of popular media, that because we don't look like we're emoting, we can't emote, or we can't feel emotions, we can't feel pathos. And I can say that's absolutely not true. If anything, I just from my own experiences, I think I feel too much, and I have trouble showing that. So I try to make a conscious effort, whether I'm working in a school or any kind of setting, or anytime I'm around people I want to positively influence. I want to show them that I care, and I try to make every active effort to show them, what, be the representative, be the advocate I wish I had in that same environment.
Yeah, wonderful. And I appreciate you jumping in with that, answering that question, because I think you're correct. People have a lot of misconceptions. Folks with autism are affectionate. Autistic people don't, are only thinking about themselves. There's so many misconceptions. So I'm glad that you brought that up. But Daniel, I so much appreciate you coming and visiting with me today, especially after the slightly confusing afternoon that you had getting locked out of the condo. But I'm very grateful for your willingness to come and visit with us. And I hope that you will stay in contact. I'd like to hear how your studies go, and maybe when you get into student teaching or get a little deeper into getting closer to graduation, maybe we'll catch back up and figure out where you are and how things are going.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you very much for the
All right.
opportunity, and have an awesome day.
Thank you. And you have an awesome afternoon.
You too.
Thank you for listening to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. Join me, Dr. Lori, on Transformation Talk Radio every second and fourth Monday at 11:30 Pacific Time as we continue to explore navigating a world not designed for diversity. For advocacy and support for individuals with disabilities, let's connect. Learn more about consulting and life coaching at notoholisticconsulting.com.